to the July episode of Fox Chatter. This is Vito here again. Got a couple of interesting interviews. I'll catch you up on what we have going on the next few months and give some thank yous. And actually, I think what I'd like to do is start with the thank yous because there's been just a lot of great stuff going on lately. And so I'll go back a month first to June drill with the Family Day. I actually would love to thank everyone, but I think I would lose you all along the way with all the people that need to be thanked for all the things that I have in my list of great stuff going on. So I'm going to hit the organizers of each of these events and then just thank the group. So for Family Day, it started off with Lieutenant Zach Birchfield. He was the planner for it, and then he handed it off to Tech Sergeant C.K. Kindell, hopefully soon to be Lieutenant Kindell, and they both just did great jobs. And they had a whole team of people underneath them working, and so you had POCs from each group. Thank you very much. And then you had people doing the grunt work from the mission support group of setting up the tents, breaking down the tents after everyone went home, right? Like they're still out there working, putting everything away. And then we had a great demo of parachuting from Senior Master Sergeant Fred Knox and his team, and just a great overall day. So I really appreciate all the organization that went into that, the effort that went into planning it, deconflicting it from regular airfield operations, prepping the area, cleaning up afterwards, a lot of the things that you just don't think of, organizing the money, what a hassle, always is a hassle, getting the food out there, getting the vendors out there, getting the bouncy houses set up, and just the whole act. So I really appreciate it, and I thought it was a really good day. So thanks to everyone. Thanks for being there for it and enjoying it. That was wonderful. Tied in with the Family Day, but going even more impactful from that has been the cleanup and refurbishment of our air park. But that's been something important to me overall, and I would frame it in the context of we need to clean up our whole base a bit, make it look a little bit nicer. If everything's important, nothing's important. And I would never want to say like this is the most important thing we have going on is making sure the shrubs look good and the trees are trimmed. But it does reach a point where you got to clean some things up and have some pride in where you operate. And so for me, that starts with the air park and our heritage and our history. I'd been talking about it for a while, and I asked Chief Master Sergeant Hartzog, your wing command chief, to run that. And he did a great job. And my ask was, I know it's a huge thing to repaint every one of those aircraft, and we probably don't have the ability to do that without making a lot of other sacrifices right now. I'm not sure that they need that level of attention, but they do need a level of attention. And so he put together a team, identified what we could do to clean them up right now and make it look like we care about them again, and really got after that. And so I just want to thank everyone who had any part of it. And so it started with the Adopt a Plane. Every plane is adopted by a group or a squadron or a shop, and each one of them went out there, and Chief Hartzog organized it so that the fire department was available with a high power water to help clean it off. And we scrubbed each of the aircraft, we cleaned them up, and we just made them look a lot nicer, and especially the F-102 out there. And so the team that cleaned all of the mold and mildew off that, like that I would look at every day for the last 5 years as I taxied back, thank you. That airplane looks so much better. They all look so much better. And even if they're not perfect, they look like we care about them again. And I really wanted that done for Family Day because I knew everyone would be walking by them. And so the teams that started by adopting them, cleaning up your airplane, please keep that up. Please stay on top of your airplane. It probably needs something every year or so. But it wasn't just that, right? The signs were falling apart. And our structures team, you're going to hear me mention them several times in the next few minutes. Our structures team, Senior Master Sergeant Ashley Wilson and his team of individuals, I coined several of them. What a great job. They redid the signs, and so it looks professional, and it looks nice. And then you go to the next level, and that was the area around the jets. And they had taken some abuse over the years, and so our CE team ripped out all of the rotting wood around the base, put in new wood boundaries around each of the aircraft that are farther away that will protect them, and then put in dump truck after dump truck after dump truck full of gravel. And so it just looks sharp again. Thanks to everyone who is part of that. The next part that ties in with that is our jet at the front gate. And if you noticed, it ain't there right now because it's getting repaired. And that was something that was months of planning and a lot of people to make happen. And so it started with noticing, boy, it's looking kind of rough. And then it is, well, how do we get that thing down? And so we found some help from Army National Guard. They let us use some cranes. It took some additional planning on our part to find the right boom to remove that aircraft, and then it took a lot of planning. And so on a down day, we had 17 of our people coming in to remove it from the CDAR teams, the metals tech, and then from structures again. And then we had our Army transportation crane, and then we had our CE grounds people again. So like these same people multiple times are taking care of business for us. And had to cut down some trees, had to get stuff out of the way so that we could clear a path to get that aircraft off. And the video of it's kind of scary as it pops off of that mount there, but man, what a great job. It swings for a little bit and you go, oh, dang. And then it settles down and off they went in the crane and drove it back. It's going to be an empty pedestal for a while because it's rusting through in places. And so multiple teams over in maintenance are getting rid of the corrosion. It's going to get painted again. And then we're looking into seeing if we can't get some more modern weapons on it. I think that would be a good look. Maybe see if we can't fabricate something that is a little bit more modern. I think that would be a nice touch to that aircraft. So it's going to be a couple of months before you see a jet on the pedestal at our gate again. And I really appreciate all of the teams and all the individuals from CDAR, taking it off, metals tech, structures that are taking care of this. So thanks for that aircraft. And I think that, as I mentioned, this is, to me, the first step is we take care of our heritage. And then the next step is I need each of you to just take a look at your buildings and the area around it and help clean those areas up. And then my last shout out is for last month also, Major General Jones came out here for a visit. And if you didn't get to meet him, what a spectacular person. What a great leader. He's our Deputy Adjutant General. He is a huge fan of us. And he's been chomping at the bit to get out here for months and go over to ammo. And he just wanted to build a bomb so bad. And he had a great time over there. To the team in ammo for hosting him, I'm sure you enjoyed it. But I also know that prep goes into it for when a 2-star general is going to come over and you got to clean up your stuff. And so thanks for hosting him. And he had a wonderful time. That was a lot of thank yous. And like I said, I wish I could say every name, but then we'd be here for another 45 minutes. We're going to get to our interviews next, and then I'll close it up with other things that are going on. My first guest is going to be Staff Sergeant Emily Fox from the 245th Air Traffic Control Squadron. I asked Emily to come in because she is a recently qualified landing zone safety officer. Are you our first? Second landing zone safety officer, which is a concept that will tie in with both DOM ops and potential deployments. Emily, can you tell us all a little bit about what a landing zone safety officer is?
Absolutely. So a landing zone is just an alternative surface to bring in aircraft, anything from a helicopter to a C-17. And there are landing zones all over the world. So what that looks like for potential future theaters where that might not be a crispy runway like we have here. It might look like a grass strip. It might be a dirt landing zone, but the idea is bring in the aircraft, get them out. It's that hub and spoke idea we've been talking about lately. So spoke out, set up an LZ, come back in or stay, depending on what the operation is.
So you would be the landing zone safety officer who would go to a pre-identified location that is potentially a good landing zone, and then you would certify that, yes, this one actually meets criteria and we can operate out of here. Is that essentially what your job is?
100%.
Who else goes with you?
It's not just air traffic controllers. It's nav aids maintenance. It is airfield management. And so we take those expertise from the three areas and blend them all together. We go out and we validate the survey. So we're looking at surface strength. We're looking at the LZ dimensions based on who we're bringing in. And then we set up the LZ markings. So you might have seen like the brightly colored panels in one of the statics, but it's so the aircraft can see them further out, right? And then we can also do lights or IR capabilities for nighttime operations. And we set up that controlling point, bring the aircraft in, and anybody can do this that's gone through the LZSO course, of course.
Yep.
The LZSO just takes responsibility for like the safety of aircraft, personnel, vehicles, controlling obstacles, things like that.
So now you've engaged the ACE side of my mind, and like questions are popping in. So your team shows up. What is the amount of time it would take from the team to show up at this potential airfield to it's certified and it's ready to go and accept aircraft?
Great question. So I think during the class in a team of 4, the least amount of time we did in 44 minutes.
Awesome.
Yes, it was amazing. But you can go a couple of days in advance, I think, to be on the safer side.
We would want that, yes.
Sure.
That would be a better scenario.
Yes, but we are, like I said, a quick response team. So we can go in with minimal time, minimal equipment, a couple of radios, a couple of people, and get the job done.
That's really intriguing. I start thinking of concepts like, our airfield's gotten hit, we can't land there, but we identify another area somewhere else where we could bring in medical assistance or supplies, whether it's helos, C-130s, and then having a team like you mentioned would be a really useful thing. This is relatively new to the 245th, correct?
Very new.
Does this tie in with the desired transition of the 245th from an air traffic control squadron to a chaos?
Yes.
And what is chaos again? Please remind us.
Combat Airfield Operations Squadron.
Okay, so for everyone who doesn't know, the 245th is looking to transition from the ATCS to a chaos squadron, which is more tied in with the way our Air Force is going. And obviously you going to this course and having these capabilities links in with that. What kind of training was it? Where do you go, and where do you anticipate using this training in the near future?
I did the course up in Stanley County, North Carolina, with our neighbors to the north, the 235th. We were very lucky to have them up there. They're great. So the 235th has really taken the lead for instruction with the LZ community, and we can pick up the phone and call them, and we have that relationship with them, which is nice. But the class itself was 2 weeks. It was the first one, actually, just for Air National Guard. So we had 2 combat controllers from AFSOC come and validate the course while we were there.
So all right, this is another branch question. Chaos, LZSOs, you said it was all Air National Guard.
Yes.
If I recall right, there actually are very limited numbers of these teams in the active duty. Is that still the case, or are there a lot on the active duty side?
There are not a lot. I think there's only, maybe in Germany there's one, and then in Georgia. And that's all that I know of on the active duty side.
That's what I thought. So essentially what we're talking about here is an almost unique Air National Guard capability that you can anticipate being called up for to use.
Yes, we're absolutely picking up the mantle for these capabilities just in the Air National Guard.
It's an amazing thing. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in my next interview, but one of the things I saw was guardsmen and reservists running a lot of things all over the place. Air operations centers, exercises. We are everywhere, even more than I thought. And so like this capability that you're talking about, Emily, is, I would just tell you, like, as you're talking, I'm just thinking, oh, you're going to get used.
100%.
Like, be ready for that. And I think this idea that your leadership and you all have done in the 245th of positioning yourself is exactly what we want to do at McIntyre, is be ready for the next thing, be predictive, look at it. And you all identified that 1950s radar just really wasn't going to cut it, and you needed to look in a different direction to be more useful to our state and our country. And we didn't really talk about this, but you mentioned to me before we started talking, like the DOMOPS use of this could absolutely be a thing as well. If we needed to bring in supplies to an area that was isolated in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, helping out our neighbors after a hurricane, like you could absolutely be called up for that.
Yes, and we have that small footprint, that quick response, and like you said, our leadership really empowers us, and we're ready to get in that fight, whether it's here or somewhere else.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate that. First, you went to the course. I can just tell from the smile on your face that you're excited to be a part of it. And I appreciate what you and everyone in the 245th and hopefully soon the Chaos are doing, and looking forward to keeping track of that and hopefully seeing you employ those capabilities. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you, and thanks for your support.
That was a great talk with Staff Sergeant Emily Fox. So like any good podcast, you have your new interviewees and then you have your regulars. And so I have my regular guest, Staff Sergeant Mitch Dunkin here to talk. Mitch and I both did an exercise in early June called Valiant Shield. It is Indo-PACOM exercise, so Pacific, right? And it is Navy, Air Force, a little bit of Army, and Marine Corps exercise. So joint, large exercise with very pronounced and specific real-world objectives. We both had experiences in different areas. I was in Hawaii. You don't want to hear about that, but it was really nice, and it was great. And I was at the headquarters. It was just a great experience for me professionally. And then, Mitch, you were in Japan. Where were you at?
I was at Misawa, so up in the northern part of Japan,
Okay.
where the F-16s also are located.
Yes, and then I know the South Dakota guys were going to Japan as well to do some ACE stuff.
Yes, sir. I think they're the 175th EFS when they were out there.
Yep, sorry,
Yes,
that's
sir.
the wing, and they're the 175th EFS.
But I
yes.
worked with the South Dakota Air National Guard a lot when I was there, actually.
Okay, so what exactly was your job with Valiant Shield?
Biggest thing is practicing ACE. That was our main focus when I was up in northern Japan, right? So getting guys out to different locations, able to fly. Things I didn't think about. We did our ACE exercise in March. That kind of helped prepare me for things.
Yes.
But it doesn't prepare you for the international partners and working with international people. And there's a lot of just simple logistical challenges and communication, right? Finding someone who speaks the same language and being able to communicate the right stuff to them is not as always easy as you would think.
So the 35th Fighter Wing, the Misawa locals did not spoke out, if I recall correctly.
No, sir, they did not.
But the 175th was operating out of Kadena, and then they went to a couple of other airfields.
Yes,
and
sir.
I don't think U.S. fighters had operated out of those locations previously, at least recently, and that was probably part of the challenge.
Yes, sir, that was. You're flying in an area that you've never flown out before as a U.S. fighter, and you're trying to work with people who you really haven't communicated with much at all beforehand, especially as a guard unit. You're going out there for the first time, and they're coming from Kadena. They haven't had the direct one-on-one talk with the locals that were there. And so even though you do have some kind of communication with them beforehand, there's a big difference between emailing someone 2 months beforehand and getting there and doing the job and talking to them in the heat of the moment.
Yeah. So what was your job in this?
So thinking like the hub part of it. So again, trying to help out the spoke locations as much as possible, making sure they can get their jets there and everything they need, analyzing all their flights and what they're doing, any reaction from any foreign adversaries, stuff like that.
So that sounds like a little bit outside the normal lane of what you do in Intel.
Yes, sir. Which actually helped a lot. I was used to being with the fighters, right, at the location where I was operating. I wasn't directly supporting the fighters. I was supporting more the intel people who were supporting the fighters.
Interesting. And how did you like the exercise?
It was interesting for sure. Learned a lot. I think it really helped actually that our exercise we did in the first place really helped me get into a place where I felt where I was able to help lead the unit I was with because they weren't as comfortable with it. So I was in a position where I was able to kind of take charge and help them get to points where we needed to be in the exercise.
Okay, great. Well, all right, I'm going to take a little step back and feed in some of my perspective from Valiant Shield, and then we'll jump back to what was going on in northern Japan. So my job in Valiant Shield was to be part of a JACE team, which is a, good luck with this acronym, like Joint Air Control Coordination Element. I should say that with more confidence, and you'd all believe me. It's something like that, but essentially what it is an Air Force team that's embedded with another service. So in this specific case, it was an Air Force team that was embedded with the JTF-1, which is the Joint Task Force, which was overall in charge of executing the mission. And this specific mission for Valiant Shield was an FTX, which means field training exercise, which means all the assets were live. They also do a lot of CPXs, which are constructive exercises, which would be significantly larger, think war games. So this specific one was an FTX with a lot of Navy ships, fair number of Army assets and a lot of air assets all throughout the theater, from northern Japan to Kadena to Anderson Air Force Base, Guam, and then any number of other smaller locations in there. And there were a fair number of fighters, tankers, bombers, all integrated. But the purpose of the FTX is one of the things I think is most interesting. The term I'd heard before but hadn't really seen in usage was we are in competition right now. So there's in competition, in crisis, in conflict. And right now we are in competition with China for the East China Sea and the South China Sea area around the Philippines and Taiwan. And so this exercise, Valiant Shield, was very specifically to be part of that competition. And when most of these flights that were flown were not what we do here out of McIntyre every day, which is to take off, go out over the ocean somewhere between Myrtle Beach and Savannah and do a defensive counter-air engagement. They are flown with much more specific objectives to counter the Chinese presence and to message our national objectives. So every single one of these vols every day had a specific objective with actual fighters, actual bombers, and being in competition meant the Chinese were doing the same thing. They were moving their forces around to send us messages back and forth. And so it was a level of exercise that I really hadn't participated in before. So I thought that was really interesting, and that's why I said up front it was really great for me professionally, because I had the opportunity to sit in on a lot of briefings, hear a ton of intel every day, and experience that this exercise was a step up, but it's actually the way PACOM lives every day. Like, this is their day-to-day existence, is in competition with the Chinese and rallying our allies, which I was impressed by the Allied participation in Valiant Shield to be in competition and send messages of what our boundaries are and what we find to be unacceptable over there. And it was great for me to be a part of that, sit in the meeting, see how the Navy operates, see how the Air Force integrates with them, and that was basically our job, was to smooth that integration. So with that kind of big picture in mind, what did you experience, Mitch, up there in northern Japan?
I think the biggest thing, similar stuff to you, the specificity of the exercise, like there's specific goals and intended repercussions almost, if you want, from us and from foreign adversaries as well, right? China doesn't just operate and do things willy-nilly. You know, there's things for a reason. And it's weird to see how clear that message is by how specific their actions are. And the same for U.S., right? What we're doing is very clear and specific actions to them as well. Goes to the great power competition right there, what we have in the East and South China Sea. The level of communication that needs to be throughout PACOM as a whole, on a minute-to-minute basis almost, that I saw, that was kind of eye-opening to see how much easier it is if I'm in constant communication, not with just one base or one area, but throughout the theater wide. It gives you a high level of SA. It helps a lot, I feel like.
Totally. There are VTCs going on constantly, passing information, commanders update briefs. Email was, I don't know about you, like my email was inundated with intelligence reports every day, and they were fascinating. I was impressed that there were so many people observing every specific thing, whether it was the Second Thomas Shoal with the Philippine Islands over there and that drama, or any number of Chinese ships that are in the region. Like, we are monitoring everything, and we are tracking everything, and we are countering most things. And one of the things that I was not aware of is sometimes it feels like when you watch the news, you feel like the Chinese are very aggressive and we're not doing anything about it. I left with a different impression when I came home, like, oh, we are absolutely doing things. Our leadership is absolutely engaged. They are absolutely, like you mentioned, specifically messaging back to them.
Yes, sir.
How did you feel about the Japanese participation in it?
Interesting. So Japan, I would almost argue Japan is one of our most important non-English speaking allies, if not the most important. And I didn't interact with them a super amount, but South Dakota Guard did, and they came back to me and we talked a lot about it. And their perspective on this future fight is different. They are now starting to kind of get more involved, more ready, more to be part of it if it does in fact happen. There apparently was kind of a misconception 5 or 10 years ago that it'd be more of the U.S. alone and unafraid, or more with Five Eye, U.S. English-speaking partners, and that's just not going to be the case. Japan's going to have to be heavily involved, and I think they are starting to step up and want to become more involved with them. We're still figuring each other out. Certain things, like something as simple as what form needs to be signed. Commander's risk is a big thing in the U.S. and for the stuff. They have similar things in Japan. However, you have to fill out the Japanese form in order to accept that risk. So I just didn't realize when to think about until you get there. So.
Yes. So I'm glad to hear that, because I thought that was interesting. The amount that they participated in the exercise, I was happy with. And I saw other non-English speakers participating at a fairly high level as well. The French were a pretty decent participant in the exercise, and it was mentioned that they want to increase that participation. So that leads into next year. There's a much larger exercise called Refor Pack that's going to be happening out there. I'm sure you heard about that.
Yes, sir.
They're talking about that constantly, and it's going to be Valiant Shield on extreme steroids. We've already, as a wing, stated that it is highly unlikely we can bring aircraft over there based on our other tasking, but we have said we can send humans over there to participate either as Agile Combat Support UTCs or as individuals in the exercise. And so one of the messages I wanted to get out was, I think that would be incredibly valuable, and if people in this wing are interested, we can try to find you a spot over there. And I think, like I said, for me personally, going over there and bringing that experience back, I think has been incredibly beneficial. Like, did you value your participation in the exercise?
Yes, sir. Like I said, your perspective changes.
Yes.
How you view that area when you come back. So
I will say, like, you always have a bias when you do something. Like, everyone else should do what I do, and I don't think that I try to combat that, but I will tell you in this case, I just feel like we need to get more people over there to the Pacific so that they can see it and understand it. The last concept I wanted to get to you is you touched on it at the beginning, and it's going to tie in with our Caribbean Fox a little bit, and I don't want to preload you with what my thoughts were, but what did you think of how ACE happened? What challenges did you see, and what things went well, what things were difficult, and what did you think of it?
challenges, one is going to be weather. Weather in the Pacific in general is not great.
Kadena got crushed.
Yes, sir.
With thunderstorms every day, all day.
Yep.
Unreal.
And that's something you don't really think about, but like there's a typhoon season. Like
Yes.
there's a large season where weather is just not going to be conducive to air
Yes.
operations.
But
And,
it affects them as well.
Yes.
Because it's that whole area.
It
Yes.
affects everybody. It affects the Navy as well. It affects where ships operate.
Yes.
Everyone. And it can change, their environment depending on what mission you're doing very rapidly. So that was a big thing. Communication. I think we've been dependent on certain easy comms for a long time in our careers, and it's just not going to be that easy when you go out and do it real world. And that was something that became apparent. Figuring out comm, can set things up, but getting everyone involved and more hands helps things go faster. Mm-hmm. So I was out there setting up comm equipment for a couple of days, and I had fun learning how to do it, and it really helped. And I think it would speed the process along when you go out and do these exercises.
Okay. So I'll bounce this off you and see if you saw this or not. But one of the things I noted was the ACE movements that did not go as planned or as well as they could have. A lot of it was not cosmic, Pacific specific things. It was very human things. They
Yes.
missed some stuff in their planning. And it had nothing to do with, like, the things I used to worry about were, I don't know if we have the right equipment. I'm not sure if we have the right training. And I looked at it and I thought, oh man, I understand that they missed that, but that was solvable. We can do this. Like, the things that are stopping it are not cosmic things. They're just normal stuff that practice fixes.
It is the simple things. You just have to think about them and beforehand.
Yes.
Right? You can't plan for everything, but if you can take a step back from the higher level thinking of it and just look at the simple stuff and think about it and walk your way through it, that'll go a lot farther. I was there a week before, and I kind of helped address a few things beforehand, but if I was there like a month before even, that would have been able to help address even more issues.
That was my overall thing is, boy, this Caribbean Fox doesn't need to be the perfect scenario. It just needs to be to a place that we don't normally go to, that no one normally goes to, that has challenges because it doesn't have all the facilities, and we're going to be challenged. Did we think of all the right stuff? And we need to be creative problem solvers with less than optimal sets of equipment there. And if we can get good at that, and if our NCOs can get good at that, and our junior officers can get good at that, we're going to be in a really good place. I left thinking, I'm excited for our trip to St. Croix and our ability to practice those things. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be, can you adapt? Can you find a way to communicate? Can you find a way to get things done? And can you draw lessons learned so that next time you don't forget that specific widget that is important?
Yes, sir.
All right. We're probably running out of time. You got anything else you want to talk about?
I think the biggest thing is, like I said, is going out there and doing these exercises. It's just like anything else in the world. Reps make you better.
Yes.
So as many reps you can get in like the NACE environment, I think would only make anyone better at doing it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, your perspective, and thanks for going on the exercise. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mitch. See ya. Thanks again to Mitch and Emily for great interviews and being yourselves and doing what you do for the team. I really appreciate that. I think I said enough in that interview talking about Re4PAC, ACE missions, and I'll just reiterate one last time. If you have the opportunity to do an exercise over there in PACOM, it would be a great opportunity. And we don't need everyone in the wing to do that. We just need a few people here and there that are interested in going over there and having that experience and then bringing it back. So here's what I'll tell you. You all get emails from me from time to time. It's got my cell phone number. It's got my email. I have the contact of the guard advisor over there. You just reach out to me direct and say, Vito, I want to go over there and I want to do something, and I will help you find a good spot to do something. They have everything from as little as 2 weeks up to a year of MPA that they can put you on to work at PACAF, and we can help you find the right place that fits you and get you a good experience, and also obviously a wonderful place to be for any amount of time, just a beautiful place. So reach out to me direct. I'm your friend. I want to help you out with this, and I got the connections, and then I'll pass them on to your commanders as well so they can do that. Moving on to how that ties in with Caribbean Fox, you've already heard that I think it's going to be a great tie-in to Caribbean Fox. I'm so jazzed that we got the money and we're able to make that happen, and it's going to be great training. We got a KC-135 with us there the whole time. We got airlift to get us there and back. Turns out when you go to good places, people volunteer, and I think we're close to getting a C-130 as well. We got some great ideas. I think it's going to be a really great time with great training as well. Looking forward to sharing some of that experience with all of you. I'll be out there for about the second half. So that's coming up, and that will lead us into our next most important event, which is going to be the October. I called it a midpoint for a while, and kind of like how multi-capable airmen are now mission-ready airmen, well, the midpoint is now a REV, so get used to that one, readiness evaluation. Our plan for that remains the same. It is a generation only, so think a phase one. But it's going to be a little bit of a different phase one. It's going to be a contested phase one because I don't think we get off this airbase for free. I think part of our adversary's objectives will be to, what's the easiest way to stop us? It's to not allow us to leave. And how do you stop us from leaving? It's not a battalion of soldiers climbing over our fence and invading. It is cutting our cyber connections. It is cutting our power. It could be a small team of special forces. It could be drones that are weaponized, and we are going to practice all of that in October. And I have no doubt, and I have high confidence that we can generate aircraft. We still need to practice it, but I know we can generate aircraft. We do need to practice some of the specifics with what a contested generation would look like. So we are not going to have a massive prep exercise leading into October, but you can anticipate little onesie-twosies interjected so that we get comfortable with it. And that's both from a worker standpoint and from a leadership standpoint. And so from a leadership standpoint, our emergency operations center is becoming a wing operations center. We're starting to purchase the systems we need for that, but that happens right outside the command post, and we're going to exercise some of those functions with Caribbean Fox. We're going to simulate that we are the MOB, or main operating base, and St. Croix is the FOB, and we will practice that connectivity using the Wing Operations Center. And then that same Wing Operations Center will be the central hub for when we do our October Rev, where we exert the leadership, keep track of where the degradations are, where the challenges are, and help kind of organize that. I anticipate that if we were to get a large deployment, think a lot of airplanes, we would have logistical challenges as well. We might not have all the airlift that we think we need for everything, and we would have to be making hard decisions about what to bring and what not to bring. So we'll work on that from a leadership standpoint and get better at making those decisions as well. But I have high confidence that October is going to go really well. And I think the last thing I want to talk about are things that really just affect all of us on a day-to-day basis, right? Like, it's really fun to talk about mission, and that is what we exist for, but what makes the mission happen is making sure we can take care of the people. What are we all worried about? We're all worried about, do we have a job? Are we getting paid? What's my job going to be next? What are my possibilities? And Guard Bureau's been making some changes there that haven't quite flowed down to us yet. So I'll just kind of give you an update on what I know. One of them is that the unit manning document is going to change a bit. I don't anticipate any deletions from it. That takes tag approval, and we haven't heard that. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but I haven't even heard rumor of that. There could be some shuffles. But I don't anticipate a lot of drama with that. I anticipate a lot of legwork. What they have decided to do, though, is hold off on the UMD because we have a new director of the Air National Guard, General Lowe retired, and General Pyrek, great individual, super motivated, is now in charge, and they're getting his perspective on what the UMD changes are going to be. What we are going to get released to us soon, though, and will cause some drama and consternation, and it already has drama and consternation from me, is the enlisted grade review. And this is not there's no way to spin it, like this is not a positive thing. It is Guard Bureau taking a look at our positions. We have a lot more high-level enlisted people than both the active duty and the reserve, and they're going to cut some of those. They're not going to cut positions, but they are going to reduce some grades. And I haven't talked about it a ton because we don't know what they're going to be yet. And so worrying about something you don't know is not helpful. But I do want to say, because some of the FAMs have been talking about it, the word has gotten out. We know it's a thing. There's nothing we can do about it right now. And it will be not painful in the short term. It will be painful in the long term. And so when this grade review gets released, it won't affect anyone who's currently in a job. And so essentially what it is if you're the grade of your position gets reduced, you're fine for a minimum of 4 years, or when you retire or hit 20 years TAFMs, whatever is longer. And there are some additional details with that, but essentially you're in a good place if you're that person. Who does it really affect? The next person who is hoping to get that promotion that you have right now to be that E8 or E9. And what we think is about a 10% reduction in E9s and a 15% reduction in E8s is what it looks like. But it won't be across the board. It'll be some here, some there, and we don't know where those will be. It'll affect that next person. And I will tell you, I have no confidence that I'm going to be successful, but I am going to ask the hard questions when we go to Guard Bureau. One of the things that I think is unfair is that officers have an ability to get promoted via, it's called ROPMA, Reserve Officer Promotion Management. Come up with a word with an A, I don't have one. ROPMA. And they have the ability to do that and get promoted outside of their position. So i.e. you can be in a major position but become a lieutenant colonel. And so my question for them is, why can't we do that for the enlisted people as well? I feel like it is justified to have more senior enlisted people than the active duty does, because we ask people to stay here longer and we're a more experienced force. And that's the reason they did that with officers, is for retention. Well, because no one should have to retire as a major. Well, I feel the same way about a master sergeant. I'm on your side. I'm going to ask those questions. Like I said, I don't have an anticipation of winning on that, but I'll try. And that's my perspective on it. So we'll keep looking for options there. And who knows, maybe we don't win now, but like I said, this is something that takes effect in the future. And maybe we can plant some seeds that sprout and bear fruit 3 or 4 years from now, before a lot of these actions really start to hurt us. So I'll give it a good college try at that. And we're all on board with trying to mitigate that. But that's one of the biggest things that I feel like is going to be a bad news situation that gets passed down sometime in the next few months. Other than that, I feel like, as you look forward, we've gotten a lot of money, or we're out of crisis in that, but we are going to be back in crisis on October 1st. So just anticipate that. In an election year, it'll be back into it. So just set your expectations appropriately for it, right? Like, this is unfortunately the new normal, is that we'll have a lot of money, we'll have a lot of days all the way until September. So smoke them while you got them. Use all the money. Put in unfunded requests. We have the money to do it. They say every year, this is the year where there's not going to be money, but it ain't this year. Maybe it'll be next year, but it won't be this year. And then on October 1st, it'll be we're in feast mode now. It'll be famine again, right? And we won't have hardly enough days to do anything with, a handful of days. People on ADOS will go from month to month, like I've been living for the last year. I've been living the ADOS frustrations, which I'm glad to have been able to share so that I understand what people are going through and I understand their frustrations. And it's going to be that same way. And by the way, we are going to bring that up, and we have some potential solutions for it for NGB. We think they have options to make that better for people on ADOS. but we're going to have to do a good job selling it, and it probably won't be easy. But I'm going to give that one a good college try as well. But that's probably what we'll have going on in October. So just brace yourself for it. We're good at it. You're all good at it. But I don't anticipate shutdowns or people losing their jobs. But I do anticipate not having a lot of temp techs, not having a whole lot of days around until a few months later when you're like we are now. We could hire every temp tech in the world if we wanted to. Right now, we're going to have a hard time spending all that money. So if you hear that and you're like, I want to be a temp tech, talk to your supervisor. Bet you we can do it for you. And that's most of the big stuff that I have on my list. One thing that I've been a little bit bummed about is there aren't any things coming into the comment box anymore. So send stuff to the comment box on your Air Force app. If you can't find it, send it direct to Casey Watson. The comment box is a great spot to be anonymous, but she'll be anonymous for you, and she won't tell me who it is, and it doesn't matter anyways. And so I like to hear that stuff. I want to hear what our problems are, so that, because sometimes if I'm not hearing stuff from there, I fully realize that people just like to say nice things to me and not tell me what the problems are. So I want you to have an anonymous way to tell me what you're worried about, what you're concerned about. So please send some comments out so we can talk to that. Thanks, everyone. Have a great month. I'll see some of you in St. Croix. See the rest of you around base, and then for drill again in August.